Hello everyone, I'm here to show you how to make tints using watercolor paints. A tint is a color mixed with white, but in this case, since we're using watercolor, instead of using white, we're going to dilute it with water. So we're going to gradually get lighter to make our tint. We'll start out with our pure color and we will have a gradation to the lighter tint. So we're going to start out with watercolor paper, red sable brush, water on my side here, and a paper towel nearby. So I'm going to start out with my watercolor. My brush is wet, and I'm going to get a little bit of paint out of my tray here. It might be too wet, but we'll see. So we'll start out with just a little block here, a little section for our pure hue. So I would like that to be a little bit darker because remember I'm going to get lighter as I go. So I'm using wet on dry technique. I didn't dry my space out because I want my edges to be crisp. I'm going to stir my brush, kind of dig down into that little watercolor space there. Let's make that a little bit darker. And that's probably good because we're going to use some of this water to flow into our next section. And that might help us see that tint there. So I'm trying to get pure color straight from the watercolor tray. All right, I think that's good. And it's pretty uniform. So what I want to do is, since this is wet, I can just blend it while it's wet. So what I want to do is take that extra paint out of my brush, but still leave water. And I'm going to make my next section. I'm going to look at how that works. I was going to start with the invisible ink feeling there. Now I'm not going to add any more paint. I'm just going to use water here. So when you dilute it, it's going to automatically be lighter. I think I'm going to let this, you see that little line I'm leaving there? I think I'm going to leave that there until this dries just a little bit, because if I don't, all that color is going to pour over here, just like it's doing, and it's going to be too dark. So I'm going to let that dry and I'm going to come back to that. Well, not dry totally, but I'm not going to connect this square with this square because that's going to run in there. So I haven't used any white. I'm using nothing but the pure color with water. So I'm going to clean my brush again. Start over. This time I'm not going to connect the boxes yet. I'm going to leave a space here. I'm going to do a wet on wet technique here. I'm going to paint out my brush. I'm going to paint out my square, my section that I want. And then I'm going to just connect it. But I still want the integrity of that square to stay. So, and I can always come back, but I'm blocking out where I want this. And it'll just bleed. The more water you use, the less paint you need if you're going lighter. It's more like a wash. So if I were to connect these now, I gave it maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds. I can connect that just a little bit. I don't want to go back up there with too much water though. So I can come back with my hue, and I can even let that dry just a little bit more so we can maintain the integrity of this square. And then I want to come back in and blend that, and then I'll come back in and blend that. So let's clean my brush again. Get some of that excess water out. It's flowing into that part. And I can come back and I can get that line a little bit more delineated, but I want to focus on this. Let me get some more color in here. Now you see that the water has started to dry and I need a little bit more water. Okay, now I'm going to leave this alone because that's blending a little bit too much. I'm going to leave this alone. And I'm going to come down here. I want a little bit more color, just a little bit. So I'm just going to take the corner of my brush and put, I don't want too much. That's too much. So I'm going to get some more water, clean my brush, and just get water Take some of that excess water out and then spread that around in the dampness that's already there. All right, I'm going to leave that alone because that's getting too close to that. So I can always come back and make that darker if I need to. Now I'm just going to clean my brush again. Nothing but water. Wet on dry here. That will eventually become wet on wet. Let's go ahead and connect that now, since I can just go ahead and let it get a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to take, just a corner of my brush into the paint. That might even be too much. And the more I spread it around, the more diluted it will be. So I'm going to leave that alone because I don't want to get any darker than that. So if you can see here, there's been a gradation from that pure color out of the tube, not the tube, the tray. And then I can come back and delineate those lines if I want. I'm going to get a little bit of water here. Just pull that down so it'll disappear into this square up underneath, and then that might give it the illusion of a line there. Okay, I like that. So blend while it's still damp. That was too much. I picked up too much right there. And I could take just a hair of the color. And down into this square. But I want to stop there because it's starting to look like that, and I need to get it. I need there to be a difference between the sections. Try to get that blended because those little pools will dry like that, and you'll get little pools of color there. Okay, so I think I want to go back and look at that top square again. So that's totally blended. I can just take that, bring that down here, make that disappear. And the more this dries, the more I'll be able to work with that. And I'm going to leave that alone, and I'll come back. Actually, I need to just bring some of this hue down. I'm going to get this water. I'm going to clean my brush and start over, but I'm going to take all the water out. It'll be damp, but I'm just going to take this and bring this down because I still want that darkness to be there, and it's picking up. If you notice, if I make too hard strokes, it'll pick up the paint. And if I need it to be darker, I'll just go back in here and get some more paint. But I want to evenly distribute it, and it was kind of pooling to the corner over there. And then I can come back and make that line a little bit more defined if I'm doing a value scale. But I want to pull that away from that because I don't want it to just flow into that over time. Why not just get a little bit more? All right. Okay, so try to spread it out and use your strokes lightly so that you don't get any streaks in there. However you leave it, that's how it's going to dry. So however it looks when it's wet, it's pretty much going to look that same way when it dries. So I'm just taking little taps here. Tap and pull. Seems to want to go in this direction better. Yep. So watch the behavior of the paint, and whatever it tells you it wants to do, try to go with that. Okay, so that gave me real dark, and I could just technically go a little bit darker, but that's just showing you tints with a watercolor wash. There was no white used at all because it's watercolor. You don't need white, you just need water. So I hope you've enjoyed watching, and thank you for watching. Have a nice day.